Welcome back. My God, it's the 20th of October, October 20th. I can't believe it's already the 3rd October, the 3rd October, the third Monday in October. And it's, wow, Jesus, where's the time go? I know I say this all the time. It's amazing. Um, and it's not for lack of enjoying. I will absolutely say that I'm really, working to enjoy the most and be present and, really in the moment, right? And enjoying those moments. And I got a new chair. You can't see it because it like my background, but it's this really great office chair. My other one, that office chair was so old. That office chair was actually my husband's chair when he was in college. And so funny story about this is because, I love to share a good story. When I was pregnant, I was sitting in that chair and he had said something to me and it was really funny. And it was so funny. I couldn't stop. I pissed in it. I pissed in the office chair. Um, when you're pregnant, I mean, those things, it happens. Full bladder, baby on the bladder, the whole thing. So that chair, a lot of memories of that chair. I'm going to miss it, but I am enjoying the new chair that I got because it's one of those really cool, dope chairs that it's the wide bottom and I can sit crisscross, which I absolutely love to do. So I'm super stoked about that. But again, welcome back to all my beautiful, radiant, renegade badgers. If you're here, it means that you chose to show up for yourself today, right? And to start this week and to take back some of control of your life, right? And that's no small thing. And if you can right now, I want you to high five yourself. If you can't, just in your mind, picture you high fiving yourself for doing this for you, right? I mean, maybe you're sipping your coffee outside, in the car, or perhaps you're lacing up to go for a rock, or just literally taking some deep breaths to shake off the Sunday scaries with those long inhales and the even longer exhales, right? Because either way, this is your little lightning strike to the nervous system. Your past doesn't get to write your future. You do. Carl Jung said, and absolutely love Carl Jung, one of my all-time favorite people. He said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And that line, it hits like a kettlebell from in the middle of an RKBS, a Russian kettlebell swing, right? Like right to the soul, right to the gut, right? Because it doesn't argue with your history, right? And it doesn't ask you to deny it. It simply is insisting on you taking agency. Becoming isn't about fixing, isn't about erasing, or even about pretending, right? It's about deciding. It's about the quieter, the stronger move, the one where you decide what's next and then you keep deciding again and again until the decision calcifies into a positive, empowering identity. And that's what I want to talk about. So let's talk about it as we roll into this fabulous 3rd week of October, right? About choosing your next self without trash talking your old one, right? About taking the raw materials, if you will, of your life and building forward, right? Growing forward. And about replacing the loyalty oath to, oh, I've always been dot, 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 with the living muscle of I'm becoming, because your past, it's a chapter, it's not your title. And, there's this seduction of I've always been, oh, I've always been the anxious one, or I've always been the helper caregiver. I've always been the peacemaker. I've always been terrible at sticking to routines. I've always sucked at math, blah, 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 blah. All these things, right? All these stories that we're telling ourselves. And, you know, We all know those lines. And if any of those hit with you, or ones that you're thinking of right now, right? They slide out so freaking easy, like a muffin that has been out of like a muffin pan, right? It just literally pops right out. And it's like they fucking belong to you, right? Like you have them tattooed all over you. And they masquerade as self-awareness. But if you listen closely, they're just contracts you never meant to sign. I've always been sounds like evidence, but it's really inertia, and it's comfort dressed in data, right? When we get these things, we say these things or we get this feedback, it's data, it's information, right? And the truth is, you don't owe your past allegiance. You're not required to keep acting out a role because you played it convincingly for a while. And, you can honor what got you here and still choose a new direction. That's not betrayal. That's what's called growth. And it's not arrogance. It's, authorship of your life. And if your brain pushes back, because remember, brains love, like, I mean, love patterns, right? Just notice it. Then, your human nervous system, it prefers the known, even if the known kind of sucks, because, well, it's what it likes. It's familiar, it's comfortable, right? So when your mind offers you the old label, the anxious one, the quiet one, the all-day fixer who only remembers, herself after the lights are off, recognize it for what it is. A pop-up ad. It's like a pop-up ad, right? You didn't ask for it. It's not a command. You can click out of it. So the craft of becoming, right? Because let's just be honest, becoming is a craft. It's not a mood, it's not a pep talk, or a you got this sticker that's slapped on the back of a car or a bottle, or something that you're going to churn out like wrote on a particularly heavy day or whatever, right? It's deliberate, it's body based, and it's tiny choices that are repeated until the repetition sculpts a new groove. And I'm talking reps. I'm not talking the in the gym reps. I'm talking about identity reps. You don't think your way into the next version of you. You train your way there, right? So basically, it's like it's a different type of gym, right? And so start with a becoming statement, a simple, grounded, and honest enough to feel a little risky. You don't want it to be so overwhelming that it's almost like what I would call the throat punch, because then you're not really, the follow through, I'm going to say, is not going to happen. So you want to feel a little scared, but not so much so that it's going to deter you from growing forward. I'm becoming someone who trusts her instincts. I'm becoming someone who moves her body because she loves it, not because she's punishing it. Or I'm becoming someone who speaks up even when my voice shakes. And, write it in your notes app. Now, listen, I'm going to say this. You know me, I am pen, paper, whatever, pencil, good old classic Ticonderoga pencils. I wish you could see. Can you see that? See the pencil? How, I digress. Anyway, write it down. Get a journal. Go to like Five Below or the Dollar Tree or whatever. They have some really cool journals there, and even some like pens. Write it down, right? Get some Post-it notes. You can stick it to the mirror, whisper it before, maybe if you're at the gym, whisper before your first set, or, maybe it's in the middle of a superset, or, maybe it's you're going into a challenging situation, or you're in the middle of adversity or challenging situation, right? I'm not aiming for poetry. I'm not saying this has to be some Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Frost, like beautiful, like even a haiku type of thing, right? I'm aiming for direction. And the point isn't, to sound inspiring. It's to give your nervous system a very clear compass heading. So like heading, a direction, so that your daily actions know where to point, right? Now, do you want to supercharge it? Well, I'm glad you said yes. I want you to pair that statement with a single action step that you can repeat. So let's take I'm becoming someone who trusts her instincts, might translate into I spend 5 minutes each morning noticing what my body actually needs before I check what the plan says. I'm becoming someone who speaks up might look like I send the hard email before lunch. It's not perfect, it's not dramatic, just consistent. So, how can we talk back to echoes? And when I say echoes, what I'm talking about is old narratives, because old narratives don't evaporate because you wrote a strong sentence. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. It is not something you sit here and just think if you do it, it's going to be okay. I said it, and like Bruno, the noisy roommate, she's like, well, oh my God, she said it. Nope, I can't. Well, they're sticky. He's sticky, and they whisper when you're tired or when you're stressed or when you're trying that new thing that stretches your identity just a hair past feeling comfortable, right? You're not cut out for this, or you always quit, or you're going to disappoint somebody again, or this is one I absolutely love, and I have gotten this a lot. You're too much, you're too intense, or another one might be you're not enough. And it's important to name this accurately, because those voices, they're not facts. Again, they're echoes, and echoes aren't dangerous unless you mistake them for directions. So catch them. It's like labeling them. So you're going to catch them, label them. Don't wrestle, don't resist, just witness it, right? Then translate. I've always been afraid to take up space because I'm becoming someone who owns her presence. Okay. I'm a helper becomes I'm becoming someone who helps herself first, so she can, help from a space of wholeness and not depletion. It could also be I'm becoming someone who helps herself first, period, full stop. Because me first doesn't mean me only. Sometimes it just means me without any strings attached, without doing it because you want to be your best so you can be your best for everybody else. It's just showing up and being the best for you. End of sentence. And if you feel the eye roll creeping in, like, well, I get it, like da 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 da. Okay, this is just semantics. Well, remember, your brain is a language-driven prediction machine. So semantics are actual signals. And changing the sentence, I like to call them badass badger reframes, right? You change the signal, you change the prediction that your body makes about what's possible. And that's not it's not toxic positivity, because I see this a lot, I hear this a lot, I've actually had this brought up to me often. That's just nervous system literacy, and it's an identity renovation. And I'm not like throwing like confetti cannons and glitter with like what's it even? I can't even think about what it's called. Caulking glitter and confetti into a cracked foundation. I'm rebuilding it from the studs. So the other thing is upgrading your audience. And I've talked about this before. I've talked about your circle. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's the proximity principle. If your friends only know the 2015 version of you, or the version that was back in high school or college or whatever, the one, and let's be honest, we apologized for existing or said yes to everything. We played small to keep the peace because we didn't want anybody to feel uncomfortable, then they may unconsciously vote for that version to stick around. And it's not from malice. That's the key. It's from familiarity. And it also makes them feel comfortable, and it keeps them in a space of sameness, because if you aren't stepping out and challenging yourself, you're not making them feel insecure because they're not doing that thing, right? Your growth can scare people who haven't stretched in a while or at all. And you need voices that speak to your becoming, people who reflect your potential back to you, like a mirror with a clean glass, right? Coaches, teammates, friends who say, hell yes, like you're changing. I'm along for that ride. This is great for me too, because I want to make some changes instead of, oh, well, you've changed, or you're not the same person that you were, or, you're really different now, or you're acting weird. I mean, do any of these hit? It's some kind of like crazy crime scene, right? And, you know, curate your inputs. Again, podcasts, listen to my podcast, there are so many other great podcasts out there in addition to mine, that are going to challenge your thinking, reading books that are going to uplift you and challenge your thinking and give you, you know, tips and things to follow along, creators who model the life that you're building, communities that celebrate growth instead of, like grit, I mean, for its own sake, right? And yes, it is going to mean there's going to be letting go of a few relationships that keep sending you a subpoena to keep the old one there. And, now I understand some relationships you can't just cut, but you can certainly limit time, right? And that's not cruelty. That is clarity, right? You're not abandoning anyone. You're choosing alignment. So I want to talk about anchoring in action. And, because becoming is a muscle, right? And we know muscles grow through repetition. So ask yourself, what does the future me do daily? And this is great. This is something that I have done and I am continuing to do in the business group that I was in, a Feel Good CEO. This was one of our things we had done in a meeting. And I've actually stuck to doing that. It's like, and I will write little journal entries about what is future me doing daily. I still do it. It's great. And, do one of these things today, or, one tomorrow, and then do it again. Right. And the thing, this is going to sound really weird, but make it boring on purpose. Okay. Does she move her body with intention? So block it on the calendar like a meeting with someone you respect. And the big spoiler alert hint is that's you. So you could put up Dr. Jim, health appointment, right? Do they speak kindly to themselves? Write the sentence you want to hear on a sticky note and read it out loud after you wash your hands or while you're washing your hands, right? Does she say no without guilt? Practice a clean no, like in low stakes situations, so that your nervous system learns it's not going to combust when it happens, right? You are not going to implode. Might feel a little ooky and wonky, but it's not going to combust, right? Does she create before she consumes? So open your notes app. Again, I'm going to tell you, open your journal, hardcore, paper, pen to actual paper, right? And do that before you open up your feed, before you open up your emails, hit social, whatever it is, right? Because every choice is a vote, and you don't topple an old identity with one dramatic gesture. You out-rep it. And the old self is going to keep campaigning. It's going to keep, voting, right? And no screaming matches needed for this. It's just, basically it's like you are going to be putting more ballots in the new box day after day after day. So this is something that's interesting, and I just want to touch on this a little bit. When the body keeps score, right? All this talk of choice doesn't erase the reality that your body does store its own minutes. And by that, I mean its attention's held in your traps, or it's the shallow breathing, or, the clenched jaws, or the flinch, like the headache perhaps, or sometimes like a twitchy eye, like seriously, right? And if you've been a fixer, you're likely carrying the posture of bracing for everyone else's storm and you don't even know it. And if you've been the quiet one, perhaps your throat may feel tight before you even try to speak, but you're not aware of it because it's a default, right? It's become your homeostasis in those kinds of situations. So with that, bring your body into the conversation. Maybe it's like a quick somatic reset, right? It does matter. It could be, exhale longer than you inhale, because what that does is that signals safety. Or shake out your hands before you step up to the bar, or, roll your shoulders back and feel your feet on the floor when you're about to say the hard thing, right? 5 seconds here, it could be 10 seconds there, little micro sets that expand your window of tolerance. And a wider window helps to make new choices feel less like cliff jumps and more like stepping stones, right? And this is why training for me is a holy ground for identity work, right? Because the gym gives me heavy, measurable metaphors. And, I practice meeting resistance without panic, right? Listen, if I'm squatting or whatever, or Olympic lifting, like there's got to be confidence stepping into that, right? It's, racking the bar when it's time to recover. And then, it's that return tomorrow stronger by 2 reps that you didn't have last week, right? And it doesn't happen overnight. We become by loading, unloading, and reloading with intention. So compassion is so here's the thing. We're not bulldozing the past, right? It's, we're honoring it. And our history, it can give us that street cred, right? It gives us the survival skills and the radar for you to use to navigate that rough terrain. But compassion doesn't mean you hand your past to the keys, or your keys to the past. And like, doesn't mean you hand your past the keys. So compassion says, thank you for keeping me alive, right? There's an appreciation to that. And then it asks, what do I need to live fully? There's a difference. And, so if your past was chaotic and you're becoming, it might look like creating calm. Maybe it's bedtime rituals. Maybe it's tidying spaces up. Maybe it's predictable rhythms that ease your nervous system, right? And if your past was silent, you're becoming may sound like truth spoken clearly, even if your voice wobbles and shakes, you get cotton mouth, sweaty palms, whatever it is, right? And maybe perhaps your past was crowded, with self abandonment. And this becoming, it may require choosing yourself daily, loudly, and unapologetically. And I'm not talking about, this as a trend, but as an actual ethic, right? So I love Meunier's. I didn't always, and it was actually Eric Thomas. This is where the basis of my Meunier morning quickies came from, was because he would do a segment, thank God it's Monday, and it was on YouTube. And when I had saw the first one, I was like, God, what such an epic concept, because it's totally reframing the way that we've always been conditioned to think of a Monday. And so actually, honestly, you could say that my Monday morning quickie concept comes from him, and it's like an honor to him, if you will. But I love Meunier's because it invites ritual, and it's not a performance. It encourages rhythm, and, becoming thrives on rhythm, the way that our muscles thrive on progressive overload, right? So, maybe your morning is, it could be a morning sentence, or I know people like to do morning prayers. It could be a midday reset. It could be an evening audit, tiny things, repeatable things, right? Ritual doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't have to be this, grandiose, huge gesture, right? It's just simple, and it demands presence. So maybe here's a simple, some patterns, if you will, that you can steal these, or you can create your own around it. In the morning, to create presence could be 3 grounded breaths, then your becoming statement, out loud or in your head, that's whatever you're more comfortable with, could be, what is one vote I will cast today for myself, right? And choose it now so that you're not negotiating with fatigue later. Then maybe the midday where you want to regulate, it could be a 2-minute nervous reset, right? So you're exhaling longer than you inhale, or it's maybe taking a brisk walk around the block, or, drop into a 60-second plank, just to remind your body that you know how to hold yourself, right? It resets the tone, and then you can resume with your day. And then the evening, this is like the review. And you could ask yourself 2 questions. So it could be, one question could be, where did I vote for my future self today? And then another one may be, where did I default to that old script? And it's not about judgment. You are just collecting data, right? And then one more question, maybe it could be, what's one tiny shift for tomorrow? So you go to bed with a plan, literally that's the size of a tiny seed, but it's manageable, it's doable, right? And over time, those tiny seeds are going to add up. I talked about that last week in Stop Digging Up Your Seeds, right? So, you know me, I always love a good hot badger tip. But before I get in that, I just quickly want to say this is actually turned out to be a lot longer than I expected. So happy Monday, everybody. Let's land this. So your past is a chapter, right? It's not your title, and it shaped you, but it doesn't get to name you, right? You choose the name, you choose the next scene, you choose the daily votes that aggregate into identity until one day someone describes you and you think, oh, wow, that is me now, right? You take you by surprise. Like they said something like, oh my God, that is true, right? It like totally takes you by surprise, but it's truth. And you are not what happened to you. And, you are what you choose to become. And, that choice, it's yours, and it's yours every damn day. So just take one more breath, slow in, longer out, feel your feet, roll your shoulders, put your hand on your heart. If that helps, you drop from thinking into knowing, whisper your becoming statement once, and then go out and cast the vote for yourself, right? Because it's a destination, it's a ritual, it's a rhythm and a rebellion. And, you just want to keep catching those little echoes and choosing the next aligned action, right? And surrounding yourself with voices that lift, not limit, right? That's so important. And keep moving your body like it belongs to the future that's already calling your name, because it does. So 4 hot badger tips, and they're actionable as fuck. So write it, lift it, live it. So choosing one becoming statement, and then pair it with one daily rep that embodies it. So, say I'm becoming someone who speaks up, then send one honest message before noon. Say I'm becoming someone who trains from love, then set a 20-minute non-negotiable movement block, right? Keep the reps small enough that you can't not do it. I know it's a double negative. Don't tell me. I know it. Stack the wins. 2, echo check to that badass badger reframe upgrade. So write an old narrative that pops up. You always quit. You're too much. You're too intense. Labeled out loud. Then, that's your echo. So replace it with an upgrade. I'm becoming someone who finishes what she starts, with rest built in. Say it with breath, long exhale. Language and physiology equals new prediction. 3rd, curate your hype crew, okay? Audit your inputs for a week. Literally, just take stock of who you're around, right? Follow a new creator who models, you're becoming. Cue one podcast, mine and somebody else's, that challenges your thinking. DM one friend who sees your growth and tell them your current focus. You want to create a micro community that mirrors your future, not your past. And the 4th one, ritual over willpower. So build a 3-part daily rhythm. Morning presence could be a statement, and that one vote for yourself. Midday, regulate, is your 2-minute nervous system reset. And then evening is the review. 2 questions and one tiny shift, right? Put it on your calendar like you would a meeting or any appointment that you have, or your kids, things you put on for your kids, put that on for yourself, because ritual keeps you moving when motivation gets moody. So you've got this. I totally believe in you. You've tuned in. And if you're here, I know that you are going to start voting for yourself, not because you're flawless, but because you're consistent. And consistency is how becoming becomes being. Don't just go through life, grow through life.